Hello, everybody. I hope, goodness gracious, that my audio is working tonight. Hope everyone in chat is doing well as you join me for episode 2 of our prep stream for the Dracula Dossier campaign. By way of introduction, my name is Grant Ellis. I am the Twitch producer for WebDM's Twitch channel and was invited by my good friend Shang Biswas to put together a show involving the tabletop role-playing game Night's Black Agents. Oh no. I've turned into a real man. Give me 1 second to just reboot my audio drivers.
Let me know, Jess, if my audio is a little more sprightly and back to regular Grant. If it's still an octave lower, that means I've turned into a real boy today, and it's the greatest day of my life. Might also be a little bit to do with my mic positioning, but go higher. How dare you? Hope everyone's doing well. And I hope the audio issue is rectified. If not, I'll have to do a pitch shift in post-production, and you'll just have to deal with deep voice Grant. Oh my goodness, Goldheart Gaming, one of the greats in tabletop live play production. The beautiful Grant. So I want to talk about this campaign and some of the things that went down. And I want to talk specifically tonight about how I'm going to prep moving forward. The first session, particularly the prep video, was I had some goals. I wanted to introduce my players to each other, because we hadn't even all met each other as people yet. I wanted to introduce the rules system, and I wanted my players to be able to feel as powerful, as the game makes them. And it is an interesting system in this regard. So, as a reminder, the Dracula Dossier campaign is what's referred to as a collaborative improvisational campaign with a lot of customizability. It is very easy to adjust the campaign and replay it many times over. For every NPC in the game has maybe 5 possible physical descriptions. They can be sided with Dracula, they can be sided with the player characters, they can be somewhere in the middle. There's lists of quirks and mannerisms, as well as, the over, I believe, 27 different organizations that are in the campaign. So it seems like a lot, and the reality is, it is a lot. However, part of the reason we are doing this series is to show that the prep is manageable, and a lot of it is player-driven. So my players have received a copy of the Dracula Dossier, and let me see if I can find a copy of it here. Whoops. The layered version of the Dracula Dossier. Here we go. So my players have a copy of Dracula. Dracula Unredacted. The idea is that Bram Stoker was asked to do a redacted after-mission report in 1893 when a group of agents from an organization known as Edom attempted to convert Dracula into an asset. They needed Dracula's help to solve problems, and you find that over history, this organization, Edom, has tried to use Dracula for their own purposes. In 1940, they wanted to use Dracula to assist against the Axis in World War II. In 1977, Dracula struck back and attempted to break their organization. But what my players have, and we'll sort of scroll down, is a copy of the novel Dracula. And you see throughout the novel, there's all these notes, and the notes are in different colors. Different people have had a copy of this book at different points. This is the original first edition unredacted version of the novel. And various spies have gone through here, various secret agents, writing their notes, trying to get to the bottom of who exactly Dracula is and how Dracula might be used for their own purposes. So my players actually have a copy of this now, and they're going through, and they are extrapolating notes. Now, a little bit about our players. For example, I have a hard time with my old aging eyes reading long books, particularly if they have small type. And while I can magnify it to, a good size and read it on the screen, sitting in front of a monitor all day that's backlit hurts my eyes. So one of the strategies I've used is an audio version of the book, and I have one that's narrated by Alan Cumming and Tim Curry, which has made getting through the novel exponentially easier. And so my players are putting together pieces of this mystery. But also this is a tabletop role-playing game. And I want to talk about some of the ways that the game handles for people that either, one, don't have a copy of the novel, two, don't have time to read a novel. So, we have a this is the table of contents, and it's very small type. I want to find the copy here where we give our players informations how to use the book if you don't want to get through it. So essentially, what they give you is a 2-page document that will walk. These are all the general clues that the players would get out of the Dracula Dossier. If they were to read it, there are a lot more clues they could get. However, any character that has such and such skill can be given these clues, and you can just say fictionally they read the book, and that will give them enough leads to launch the campaign, which I really appreciate the designers doing, rather than saying, no, you're required to read a 490-page novel and all the annotations and create a conspiracy map on your corkboard. Now, I know Burst of Hope, Jess, is doing this. Hi, Eberlin. Good to see you in chat. But it's not everyone's cup of tea, so when you're prepping this campaign for your players, it's important to think, do they have time? Do they have the capacity? They might be working, long hours. And so you want to make sure that you gear the campaign towards the capacity that your players have. I have a prep sheet. Aha! So something that we're going to do today is we're going to personalize this campaign. Being a improvisational campaign, let me zoom in a little bit. I have some questions that I'm going to answer. Some of them have already been answered. And we're going to talk about things that my players have done already and how we might respond to them. So first, let's talk about some things that my players did. First things, they met, so my players met Olivia Liu, American journalist, an ally and associate of Harker. This Harker has died. So at the climax of the first episode, high in the clock tower, there was an individual who was holding documents in their hands, and they turned their head and looked down at the party, who looked up, and they recognized the individual from his photos. This was an agent known as Harker, who had been investigating a Romanian grave site, archaeological dig site, and had been putting together this investigation based off of a document they held, known as the Dracula Dossier. And also, I would like everyone in chat, this is a lot of information here. It's a great big cognitive load, but I'm hopefully going to help distill this. So the players have found this individual. But there was another person in the clock tower, a tall man with red eyes that were glowing in the dark, and a red scar across his face that was also glowing red. He shot Harker twice, who fell to his death, crashing on the hood of his car. His documents in his hands, and this happened moments after my players arrived on the scene. Now here's what they know. Or what did they learn? Okay. An organization known as Operation Edom is involved in this conspiracy. They have kill squads, resources, and seem bent on recovering the dossier, which is the document that the players have recovered. They also met an individual known as Hartness, an Edom operative that was running operations in Marrakesh. Escaped with an asset known as Hassan Safet. So my players really didn't get a lot of opportunity to meet Hassan, but that is who Olivia Liu left with. Hartness was an Edom operative. We described Hartness as the Pale Man. Now, there was some illusion by my players that the Pale Man must be a vampire. No, it's just a pasty individual. And they had the codename the Pale Man. Some things that I know about Hartness that my players don't. Hartness reports to the Hound, or rather, Hound. The Hound is like something from Game of Thrones. I'm going to make a note here about what page this is on. Whoops. Page 51. Aha! And we are going to page 51. So I recommend people that prep this campaign refer to the various annotations, because unlike a standard, like, say, adventure book from some of the other games I have played, this campaign uses 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. There's one book not open. So there's about 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, at least 6 books. So it's a lot to keep track of. I want to know that this individual is in the DH for Director's Handbook. And let's look a little bit at this individual. Oh, come on. Just so we can get a flavor. So, we also know Harkness had the C-word serum, which we added. So, the Hound is the primary field agent for Edom in a non-murderous capacity. A short, attractive woman with reddish-brown hair. I'm already in love. She wears a suit. Again, I'm in love. And a crucifix necklace. And radiates competence and security. She speaks a dozen languages and has contacts all over European law enforcement. She mostly spends her time trying to map Dracula's activities to assemble a pattern for analysis. She doesn't care who he kills, as long as every now and then some of them are terrorists. Cop Talk gets her respectful attention, although nothing short of coercion, or being vampirized, of course, will double her against Edom. So, she is very much allied with Edom, and we'll talk about who they are. Because I think if you're prepping this, there's so many books and there's so much going on, and everything seems to come back to Edom. The quickest way to figure out who they are at a high level is to go to the back cover. And on the back cover, they tell you. So, the original heroes of Dracula carried out a secret operation for British intelligence, an operation that went wrong. Operation Edom failed to capture Dracula in 1894. So, the characters in the original Dracula novel were members of a secret organization called Edom. They failed to stop Hitler in 1940, and they failed to find Dracula's mole in 1977. We'll talk about, because that's going to relate to modern day. Now Edom uses Dracula to stop terror in the 21st century, but Dracula cannot be used, and Edom cannot be trusted. You found out the truth, you found the Dracula Dossier, now you must follow its clues to evade Edom and kill Dracula for good. So, in modern time, and we'll talk about this here, I made a note down here. So I've made some Edom notes, because if you're reading this book and you're trying to figure out what everything is, you see a lot of, like, annotations. You know, a lot of people have seen spy movies and they know MI6 is a secret agency organization, but I find it helps me when there's so many different organizations to figure out. So Edom often refers to NID, which is the Naval Intelligence Department. In 1940, they often refer to the SOE, which is the Special Operations Executive, which was based out of Romania. They were going to use Dracula to essentially go up against the German government, the Third Reich, etc. And then the Department of External Intelligence. So all of these things start to come up. And then I boiled down exactly what Edom was up to. There's a 2-page primer. And I boiled it down to in 1893, they tried to flip Dracula, and it went wild. So you had these individuals like Van Helsing and Harker, and they approached Dracula. There were volcanic eruptions, and it went poorly. They were not able to convert Dracula into an asset, and Dracula wanted to take over England. In 1940, they needed his help again, but Dracula double-crossed them and set them up for failure. Then, in 1977, the same organization realized that Dracula had a network in London and around the world that they were using to, or rather he was using to, manipulate everything from behind the scenes. And so Edom was going around arresting people in broad daylight, executing them. They were really going to war against themselves, ripping themselves to shreds, trying to figure out who the insider was that was helping Dracula keep one step ahead of them. But that operation failed. The leader of Edom was pulled out, and someone else was put in. Same thing with MI6. And they never did quite find who the mole was. Now, we have some ideas who that might be, and part of our prep will be in discussing how and why that happened. Also, part of our prep will we'll talk about why the original operation failed. And then in 2011, Edom came back. That's roughly when this campaign was written. And Dracula was being used to attack Al-Qaeda, all sorts of terrorists that were participating in acts of terror around the world. However, as the back cover says, it's like Dracula can't really be controlled, and Dracula seems to be doing more than just eating terrorists. The wheels seem to be turning. So I want to show you in the book, and let's take a behind the scenes about some of the things that are going on. These are members of the Dracula conspiracy, so we will... Whoop. Let's take it out of 2-page view. Single page view. So this is a conspiramid. Hey, thank you so much for saying hi in chat. Thank you for supporting the show. So the game provides a tool where you start at the neighborhood level and go all the way up back to Dracula. I've built these before for other campaigns, and this explains how you go from inappropriate union workers on a dock that are working against the union and smuggling things here and there, to the local leaders of the city, up into larger mafia organizations, further and up into very large federal law enforcement agencies, or even members of the Senate or another governing body of a nation, up into the vampire that's masterminding the entire operation. Now, vampires have their own initiatives. For example, they might be trying to establish a shadow government. They might be attempting to, acquire in a mass an actual state. They want to replace the government that currently exists. They don't want to operate out of the shadows. Regardless of what their motive is, vampires will strike back when they're messed with, and they do this in a similar level. So Dracula knows my player characters exist right now. Dracula knows this because Edom failed to kill them twice. Not only that, they failed to kill Olivia Liu. So Dracula is interested in my player characters now. And based on different actions that my characters participate, Dracula will take actions against them, or members of the vampire conspiracy. Now, there's also the other organization, Edom, that we're talking about, who they have lost the Dracula Dossier, and they want it back. And they have their own goals as well, where they want to keep control and keep using these vampires to manipulate global politics. The next action they're probably going to do is they're going to try to attempt to intimidate the agents. They have these individuals known as Jacks, who are genetically modified individuals. Think of, like, say, Nemesis from Resident Evil 3. Maybe not that intense, but these are individuals that have access to having their genetic code modified to give them advantages over our player characters. So one of the things we talked about doing, though, as part of the prep, because now we're in the campaign, and we need to personalize this campaign to my players. And so we have some questions that we need to have answered. So first things first, the player's acquired the dossier from the dead hands of Harker and are working to escape London. They have leads to go to Romania and or Gibraltar. So let's add this down here. Edom is sending agents from a secret base located at a satellite, a military satellite facility in Gibraltar. Edom is excavating a vampire gravesite in Romania. Parker's research points to Romania. What heat have they drawn is another question that we're going to answer. So, they rescued Lou. They impersonated, or they lied to Harkness. They, escaped with the dossier and wrecked 2 kill squad vans. So part of the reason I'm making notes, one is to bring it back into my recollection, 2, it's to sort of figure out the amount of pushback. The game has a concept called heat, and we'll talk about what that is. So, running all over Europe shooting vampires attracts attention from governments, police agencies, and other unsympathetic official observers. Nice Black Agents represents this attention and the concomitant investigations and pursuits with the abstract value of heat. Gaining heat. The agents begin with 1 heat, indicating their presence in at least some police file, surveillance footage, agency dossier, or criminal database. The entire crew of agents has 1 heat score in common. They are each other's known associates, and the actions of 1 agent redound on them all. So here are some things we know. They didn't steal any cars. They didn't go into the black market. They did do some digital intrusion. 1 second. Apologies. If you must know, someone was asking if I got any additional caffeinated beverages. But essentially what my players did is they didn't get any, oh gosh, assassinating a head of state. Here's why heat is drawn. And let me go back here. So The amount of heat drawn is between 2 and 4. Hi, Noah. Here are things that my players don't know. These aren't bad, but this is what draws them heat. So we're gonna what they didn't know. We're actually gonna make these some headings. Hello, good to see you, Repaid Worm. Things that make your prep easier are doing things that make the document more searchable and discoverable. I like to do headers because they'll show up in the outline version. So if I have questions, see this right here? Now this is not a tutorial on using Google Docs or Microsoft Word or OpenOffice, but by turning my questions into headers, it makes the content more discoverable for me. Noah is actually critical to my prep. So, let's talk about what my players didn't know. The players didn't know that Edom had contacted the police, government, and federal law enforcement agencies to pose as an anti-terrorist group going after zealous terrorists trying to bomb a church. So, what Edom told the government, they posed themselves as someone else, went to the government, and were like, hey, you have a terrorist group, they're going to attack a church, and they're going to set off some explosions, and we're going to try to take them out. What happened was they were exploded, and there were explosives that my players had. They launched the explosives at Edom. They just decimated and destroyed their combat vans, and they seriously hurt them. So what you have is Edom posing as an anti-terrorist group getting hurt by terrorists. Not only that, there is a photo of Jisoo, Jess's character, that was taken at the scene. That photo might be distributed around places. Maybe. But here's why it wouldn't. Jisoo has the dossier. And if Edom takes Jisoo's photo and goes right to the nightly news, it compromises the dossier. So, that puts us in an interesting situation. Yeah, I actually love Jisoo as a character. I love all the characters. And let's talk about that a little bit. So here are my players. And they are all good people. Oh no! Pro is playing Daquan, a former military. They were SAS special forces for the UK, and after being injured in a military conflict, went to Africa to work as an instructor and a trainer for a mercenary group that assists various governments in dealing with terrorists. Daquan came into contact in the mercenary group came into contact with vampires. So there was a governmental coup. They went in, turned out they were dealing with the supernatural, and that's when Daquan went underground. Jess is playing Jisoo. Jisoo is our hacker character, our digital intruder, who is actually working on deciphering the Dracula Dossier. Lily is playing T, who has connections with various Asian mafia, and was well connected in the club scene, and has demonstrable proof that vampires exist and the vampire conspiracy exists because the vampires were deeply involved within the Asian criminal elemental scene and working on infiltrating various governments. Shang is playing Antal Kuri, who is our wet worker, cleaner, Jason Bourne style killman. And has so much salt for the younger characters. But this is a delightful group. And I frame some of this because each of them might have some things they have not revealed to the other players yet. And they might have some side scenes that they're working on with me, based on all their various backgrounds that will manifest over time in the game. So, we know Jisoo had a photo taken before exiting Church's battleground. So let's talk about where they might end up, and then we'll go back and answer some of our questions. I apologize if this prep seems a little out of order, but I think it's important for us to talk about where they might go. Gibraltar, Romania. Let's look at our session 1 prep. And we're just going to copy this over. And we're going to talk through. So no prep is wasted. Let's talk about what's there. It's a secret satellite station. We'll reveal the backstory for Operation Edom. So these are sort of the clues, and then so let's take a look at this. So these are just the PDFs I'm sharing. This one is called the Edom Files. There's also a free adventure called a free adventure called The Harker Intrusion, available from Free RPG Day in 2015. You can find that file, I believe, on Pelgrane's website, as well as other Free RPG Day sources. And most of the rules are included in those Free RPG Days, so it's important to remember that some of the themes of the system is our players are extremely powerful, extremely competent. They most likely succeed at most things that they do. However, there are forces out there in the world that are more powerful than they are. So here are some things, this alternate scene that we can look at. So, essentially, SIGINT, which is the Signals Intelligence Network, is located there. And essentially, the intelligence organization has that satellite station. And it's the old World War II era station. And let's talk about some things that we want to describe. Let's write down to era abandoned in a hurry. Dark, flickering lights, dusty, exposed wires. What I'm writing, why I'm writing this here, is to bring back to my memory when I'm playing the game how I might describe some things. We get there. I can describe the lack of polish on the wood of the tables and the desks, the low-hanging ceilings that are painted a neutral off-white color. However, the paint has chipped and cracked over the decades that this station has been abandoned. Seats are left hanging from their desks, and files and papers are strewn about, looking as if they were grabbed in a hurry. All signs point to foot traffic of 40 individuals that fled this facility in less than an hour. Then we might look at some surveillance tapes, etc. And then it's important, we're still in our second session, I'm going to prompt my characters, prompt my players for things they might do. They get information and they get clues based on the investigative abilities that they use. And some of the things that they will learn is using skills like geology or electronic surveillance. Traffic analysis. Traffic analysis is a skill that refers to all of the compilation of data that they get. So, for example, if I was looking through a folder of old phone records and I needed to go through it, kind of like Lester Friedman from The Wire, someone who has worked on pawn shop criminal cases, going through all of the small finite details, that would reveal to them information about these special biological assets. And jacks, we mentioned a jack is a genetically modified individual. And if my players come to Gibraltar, they will encounter the jack. And now let's look at some of the aspects of this jack. And what we're going to do is we are going to snip this, and we are going to copy it. So if you use Windows, there's a tool called Snip, and Snip will allow you to slice things from your screen. I like to do a snip and then put it in my working Google document. The reason I use a Google document and not another another service is it links to my phone, so this file is live updating now on my phone in real time. And if I need to check my notes at any points while I'm traveling, I can. That's the reason why I use it as a digital tool and a resource. So this jack's name is Jeff Holloway, and he barely remembers that now. He's an HMS Proserpine. Yep, okay. Let's check what this says in the Director's Handbook. I've read about this ship, and it has a lot to do with Edom. I think there's, like, vampires held captive and everything there. No dog tags, no other identification. Used to be in the Royal Navy. Athletics 12. My player's highest athletics ability is something like... 8. So this individual has special moves that they can do. Yeah, I mostly only use Google Doc simply because it's easier for me to dictate into my phone. I have a motor function disability in my hands, so it's very difficult. Also, you'll notice there is a voucher code in chat if you want to get 20% off of any of the Night's Black Agents products related to the Dracula Dossier campaign. I have a voucher code in chat. It's good to August 31st. Feel free to use that code to click on one of the links and check out either the Dracula Dossier campaign. We have our soundtrack with all of our wonderful music, as well as the game system itself. Again, you can use that code, which I think I got in there, to get 20% off any of the products. And we're very appreciative to Pelgrane Press for providing that as a perk to those that view these streams and participate in our directed campaign. Yeah, so as I was mentioning about my motor function disability in Google Docs, and I think this is important with Prep 2, is simply I'm able to dictate notes into my phone and very quickly, and I understand there's other types of dictation software in that, but for me it's very helpful because I have a lot of other projects I use that are Google-centric across all my plays. But OneNote is extremely useful for campaign organization. There's a lot of tools out there. I stick with a Google Docs system for my needs, and I recommend you to find a system that works best for you. When I used to record surgeons that were teaching surgery, they would explain, I recommend you use the procedure that you are best at when you are trying to fix someone. So I think it aligns. I definitely love all the features. Particularly, there's been some phenomenal work done in OneNote around the various RPG communities. So, some things to note about this Jack. Back to the campaign prep. Doesn't fight well in direct sunlight. The C-word serum would be canceled in the sunlight. But this individual has vampiric speed and hits harder than most. And they have a lot of points they can spend. There's also a sorceress in Romania, so the players are going to come through. Now, this doesn't seem like a lot. I typically tend to prefer high notes and to listen to the things that my players have introduced and the skills that they are going to use in the scene, but I do need to know that this needs to feel like something antiquated from, I'm going to add that word here, antiquated furniture. All right, listen here, Lady Lucia. You are off my stream. Yeah, there's a sorceress in Romania, no big deal. She was also in Marrakesh, but Daquan lied and succeeded, explaining that they would be the individual to essentially take out Olivia Liu. Turns out they were one of our heroes. So Gibraltar has a secret satellite station. Secret MI6 satellite station. Players need, I've already written that. They're going to use their various investigative abilities to infiltrate it. They're going to explore it, and while they're there, they are going to find more information about our Romanian graves, and they will find out more about Operation Edom. And this individual, the major conflict there. So the way these scenes work is you're in investigative scenes, and then you're in confrontation scenes, more or less. In investigation scenes, you just say you're using an ability, it works. You don't necessarily roll any dice, at least not typically. Then in the confrontation scenes, we add that random chance where there are going to be these genetically modified vampiric individuals that are going to attempt to murder the player characters. And then there's going to be the player characters that also have a lot of resources. Let's talk about some things that are going on in Romania. And I have a feeling that that is where my players are going to end up. So let's refine our notes. And let's talk about how it's going to morph. This is an investigative game that's player-directed. We need to give clues about Edom's next moves. We need to point the players to another aspect of the conspiracy. Need to tie in an asset they can obtain. Someone that can help them. So Romania has an excavation site in a monastery, and we've got like the NBA, the National Basketball League. Let me find it. We're gonna go in my drive, and we're gonna pull out some of the things that we know about those sites. I have played a great deal, or rather, I have opened and closed a great deal of documents between now and then. But this is one that has licensed photos for the various locations they might end up. So since my players already have clues pointed towards Romania, I want to give them either something that points to an additional thing they can investigate in Romania, or another location, maybe another country, as I look at my conspiracy. But Romania, you see this here, has this monastery, and they're in the, I believe, Carpathian Mountains in Cluj-Napoca and the Targu Mures. And essentially, they're going to go up the mountains and they're going to arm themselves. And what they know about Romania is Olivia Liu was nearly killed there. Essentially, the Edom is trying to awaken a vampire, at least get the vampire's coffin. But let's look. Brooks Galbraith is there, who is the lead archaeologist. These are questions we answered last time. And Martin Creasy's there. Martin Creasy, we described him, looks a lot like Idris Elba, and is a sharp individual. Almost has like a vacationing look about them, even though this is highly serious. They're willing to invest in this site and continue to excavate these vampire graves. So the words archaeology, I'm gonna bold it. If my players use the investigative skill archaeology, I'm going to explain to them about who's directing. And this all looks like it's being done very, very quickly with great haste. If they use accounting, they start checking the books, they go around to banks, they start infiltrating computers, etc. They're going to learn that Martin Creasy is essentially behind it. These are more information, but they're individuals they can investigate. We now know that the defenses do include, since she was not killed or was not defeated, So, and we know that they have these police grade defenses. Let's grab our sorceress stat block. So, grab my snipping tool. We're going to grab this sorceress and add her to the Google Doc. I need to figure out how she looks exactly. I mean, it probably has a description here. Her name is Karja. Just Karja. She's like Cher. She might be Ruvari Jagani, or product of weird experiments by the Caldwell Foundation, or at Petesti Prison, or Strasbourg Orphanage. She's a conspiracy asset. So let's see who Ruvari Jagni is, and likewise with the Jack, we'll check out that ship. But right now, let's check out 147 of the Director's Handbook. So, they're Romani, it looks like, that were at one point enslaved by... in the same villages where Vlad the Impaler attacked. So we know that they're, a secretive and self-contained people. This is what we're going to learn. Most Ruvari, I'll zoom in so we can look at it. Most Ruvari are conspiracy, true, but Edom turned one or more Ruvari Jagni bands after Dracula's defeat in 1894. So you either work for Dracula or you work for Edom. They remained on the payroll even after the Iron Curtain descended in 1945. Edam's agents spied on Castle Dracula, reported on events in Romania for the British, but they were never a trusted source of intelligence, and there was little doubt among Edam's analysts that the Rivari were trying to serve two masters by reporting everything they told to the British to their vampire patrons. The Rivari network in Romania was rolled up and eliminated in the chaos after the events of 1977. Still willing to balance Dracula's gold against the pound sterling. Reassurance means they don't actually betray the agents. So here's what we know. There's... Interesting. There's a reference in the dossier. Let's also see what this says. I guess of the count. If you want to make the Rivari Jagni more of a challenge later in the campaign than their worship of Dracula, long exposure to weird telluric energies, black magic rituals may have given them added abilities. Perhaps they're werewolves. Perhaps they're spellcasters. I think that ties in to the sorceress and their attunement to telluric fields. And let's talk about telluric currents. So a telluric current means it's from the soil, it's from the earth. It means the earth has an actual energy that is providing these powers. There is power from the planet that is given lines of a sort. We haven't answered our questions at the top of the document yet. But I believe that there is a, for lack of a better term, stone from space that has corrupted the earth and the soil and has created this supernatural thing. Because there's lots of choices you have for what vampires are and where they come from in the campaign. They're not all one set thing. They can be traditional vampires where they're damned. They could be trained in the scholomance like Dracula was. Likewise, they may be mutants. They could be aliens. There's a lot of choices. So I'm going to go up. Just double check. They're very similar to the Roma people. And I think that's probably... Let's check Strasbourg Orphanage, though. Might go past my, past what I'm willing to engage with. I think I would frame it as a psychic listening post, and I don't think that's where this character comes from. So we've decided some things, and this is part of our prep. We make decisions. I think she might be an individual. Let's see. Let's find a face claim. Let's go on. This is her after hours. Just beautiful. Ooh. Yeah, there's some interesting ones of different women in elaborate floral. I know this is the real exciting part, but da-da-da-da-da. Yeah, I'll find an enchanting Roma tribe. Well, I'm glad you enjoyed it so far, Leone. You know, have a great night. This game kind of has unusual prep, but you know, I've got some other general prep secrets I'd be happy to send your way as well. This is a lot of fun, though. I'm looking for essentially beautiful people to stick into this. So at this point, like here, I'll drop her in. This would be her daughter. This is going to be oh, come on. Too large. There she is. That is a Romani woman. Also, same photographer. Before Operation Edom. Yeah, this is interesting. I'm used to prepping, traditional RPGs in 30 minutes for a 2-hour session. But, yeah, this is interesting because I just need to be prepared to pivot for the players. So, let's see some of the things that the sorceress does. Controlling weather, mesmerism, summoning rats. So, we are going to end up getting pointed to Martin Creasy, who we need to find in the book. There we go. There he is. Let's add him in there. Boop. And let's take a look at what Martin's been up to, because this is going to open up So petroleum, the American wild card, geological info dump, last second helicopter extraction. So there was a regime going on in the 1940s that caused a bunch of problems. So Creasy, not just an American, he's a Texan. I think Creasy is innocent. Either an innocent that can get them out of Dracula land, or they might be an asset. They might be CIA. So we need to make some decisions. We need to either... Creasy will be a double agent, or rather a CIA agent, or just a kind-hearted petroleum executive. I think if the going gets tough, Creasy is the way out. That's where we're going to start. It could change during the session. I think if the going gets tough for the player characters, Creasy is there to kind of help if they spend some points. If it goes wrong, or rather, if everything goes fine and the players are fine, Creasy's probably an innocent that still might help them out, but I don't think Creasy is an asset. I think Creasy's there to mostly bask in the beauty of the Romanian, Transylvanian countryside, and tap into the oil reserves. However, I always like a double twist. You know, it's like the movie Clue. Is Mr. Green an FBI agent, or is Mr. Green just, you know, a doofus? Have multiple outs just in case, but it's important for me to write that Creasy might be might be an out. So let's pull in Ruvari, Jagni, Johnny. So what we want to do is we want to be prepared to frame that organization, that node, and frame them. So as part of our prep, we'll just write down the quick line. They were on page roughly 157. I thought I said 157. More Romanian spies. So there's all sorts of Romanian government. Romanian mafia. Yeah, we gotta do a bunch. We're gonna have fun. We gotta do a lot of looking into Romania, picking apart this book. I think that's where we're gonna end up. Let's double check her thing. So 147. I apologize. I was off by 10 pages. So I think that they are going to be tied largely to Edom. I think that that's where they are currently allied with. And I think she is key. Could be that they're all tied to the conspiracy and she's tied to Edom, kind of a slight double agent, but... So we're going to tie this to the following. Connected to nodes. Romanian Mafia. Castle Dracula. So this organization lives near Castle Dracula, so it's kind of like that'll point them to it. Second session, my players end up at Castle Dracula. I think we're in for a big scary fight if that happens. Now, let's talk about some of the other things that are happening here. They're attempting to awaken a vampire. So, you know, if we look back at the Edom files, so the goal of my players here are to destroy the vampire coffin. So let's talk about the way it goes. So destroy the vampire coffin, the gravesite, or battle the baby vampire. I'm calling it a baby vampire because the book describes it as a weaker version of a vampire. And so the nameless vampire has... We'll just copy this. Grab my stip tool once more. And we are going to select this. And we are going to paste it into my Google Doc. Mostly just so it's there so I can quickly reference it during the session. That's one of the reasons I like using the digital tools as well is, you know, when I'm in the session, I can quickly reference my notes. You know, for me, you know, it'll be similar to this and, you know, I'll get through it. I think we have a good handle on things that might happen. We might end up at Gibraltar and we might end up in Romania, but we have some ideas of what we want to do there. We'll learn more about Edom and be able to introduce things that point to Edom if we end up in Gibraltar. And if we end up in Romania, we have a fun confrontation at the excavation site. Since this is a game that is based on highly empowered characters, we don't need to go into like a deep, detailed tactical map. We just need to think about the general flow of battle. We're going to have police-grade militia and a powerful, you know, Ruvari Jagni sorceress and potentially a newly awakened vampire. Hi, Norm. Good to see you in chat. Welcome, welcome. So let's answer some questions. So our agents acquired the dossier in London. Does Edom have a vampire? I believe they have access to vampires that are kept in their secret prisons aboard their vessel, and we'll double check, and let's look into this. So let's look at the Jack. The Jack, page 169. The questions that we're answering are questions that the game designers ask us. The HMS Prosperpine. This location primarily applies to campaigns in which Edom obtained its own vampire, either in 1894 or afterwards. In other campaigns, the Stone Frigate is just how Edom launders its secret off-the-books payroll, and investigations listed merely provide names for some current Edom personnel. There is no oil platform. The Stone Frigate is entirely notional. They go into the reason it's named. If my players pay clues, they can get this. So Prosperpine is where essentially we might have things pointed there. And there's things like the Edom field manual that can be pointed towards our players, and they can figure out different aspects of the campaign. I say very weakly. It's interesting material. So back to the Director's Handbook. So getting there will be very difficult. And it has these lovely maps of the facility. This is where we get into our tactical maps. This is the type of prep that I would refer to as not needing to go too deep into. I think the answer to the question, though, is that since we're using the Jack and we're using the HMS Prosperpine, we should imply that Edom has their own vampires. See, there's vampire holding cells right here on the map. So that's how we answer that question. Sorry, I'm crying because I was pressing back. Look at the HMS Prosperpine Director's Handbook, page 169. I believe it's page 169. We'll double check. Yeah, it's pretty close. Do other agencies know about vampires? Let's see how the book asks us this question. As we go to the table of contents, which is applicable, it is there's a section on making the campaign your own. So we need to figure out why and this can come later. So if Edom has their own vampires, why are they keeping Dracula alive? So Dracula must have something very powerful over their head. The dossier never explicitly says that any other agency, foreign or domestic, besides Edom knows about vampires or even about Edom. It's very likely the more fun and interesting answer is at least one or two other players in the game. The CIA via Morris, and the successor of the German program. This adds complexity. So I'm going to say G&D in Germany, because Van Helsing, mother effers, and CIA in America. Does Dracula have any more vampires? No. But Dracula does have experiments. So another vampire would cause issues with Dracula's sort of power dynamic. So Dracula has focused on building vampires and other powerful allies. Let me punch in a little bit. Reset this. All right. Do vampires work the way Van Helsing thought they did? No. Vampires are not exactly creatures of the damned. They are powered through telluric energy that may or may not be of this world, but they break the tradition. How thoroughly has Dracula penetrated Britain? There is has operatives in every branch of government, and we'll talk about this. So you can see here, there's if you're using damned vampires or other Victorian era vampires, then Van Helsing would have been correct. But since we're using the power of the Earth's own electromagnetic field and links to volcanism and extraterrestrial organizations, if anything, the vampires are going to work a little differently. And Dracula does not control Edom or MI6, but Dracula is going to have agents. But they have little influence. However, Dracula does have strong control over MI6 and intelligence agencies. Is Drac the Ripper involved somehow? No. I don't think so. But it's good to note. And the reason they asked this question is because there is some historical crossover. In the Icelandic edition of Dracula, there is reference to the Whitechapel killings. And there's certain things I like too, like when they make reference to the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn and other ritual magic. organizations. In life, which historical figure, if any, was Dracula? So if my players are going to look into Dracula's historical past, I think it's time for a music switch. So let's see. John Dracula was actually named Dracula. So we're gonna have to, whoever we pick, will have to look in. So we know Vlad the Impaler was thought to potentially be Dracula. That's where we first have reference to Dracula, but we know that individual's dead. I think we're gonna go with John Dracula from 1535. Because it's very obscure. And, so who blew the first operation in Edom in 1894? So I have notes down here as we go all the way to the bottom. Or rather, we had some, we were talking about what Edom... I don't see them, but it's fine. Essentially, in 1894 is when the Dracula novel takes place, and someone blew it, and it was Van Helsing. The reason it was Van Helsing is Van Helsing keeps trying to kill Dracula throughout the novel. Van Helsing is a very anti-Dracula, and part of the reason for this is Van Helsing was not wanting to work with Edom. He had ulterior motives. And let's double check. So let's go up. So one of these folks were required. And Van Helsing. So it's Van Helsing. So Abraham Van Helsing. And I'm thinking Van Helsing came in as a cleaner who I'm pretty sure that Van Helsing, who was not a British spy, was in there trying to eliminate Dracula instead of converting him. That's the important thing. Wanted Dracula dead and not converted. Edom's actual plan was to locate mole within the UK government, but mostly they defeated their own allies and broke trust. So, let's see what the book talks about in this situation, this regard. Essentially, yeah, I really like doing that. It makes it very easy to get around. Good to see you, by the way. So essentially, depending on who this mole is, Nicholas Lohman, on page 89, that's going to determine, so essentially I think it got flipped on them. It's one of those things where they went on an own, their mole hunt turned into a witch hunt, and they ended up failing. And I think the mole was most likely related to Quincy Morris. So, we answered was Edom legacy. Legacy refers to people who are descendants and related to other figures in the novels. So we figured out a lot here where the Hound, or rather Hound, is possibly going to become involved because of Harkness's failure. Olivia Liu, there's going to be some questions that we need answered. You know, what happens to Olivia Liu? Are they going to go to the grave site, and how are they going to handle the heat that's on them? We know a bit more about some of our NPCs. We know that Edom has vampires, and we know that there is a powerful Romani collective that has spellcasting abilities, you know, that has connections to Romanian mafia and knows the location of Castle Dracula. So, on top of this, my players have the literal Dracula unredacted dossier and are pulling out their own clues that will be dropped on top of this. As they present those clues to me, I'm going to be able to work those into adventure hooks. But I think since they have a couple of immediate adventure hooks, and if they come at me and present me, you know, information that they have from here, it's important for me to start putting into place these other questions. So I now know. Hey, Roger, good to see you. I now know why Edom failed in 1894. I now know that after the World War II, American oil companies, etc., became involved in those Romanian lands. I know the nature of the vampires in this world, this fictitious world. Likewise, all these other smaller various connections are now coming in. So even though we started with these questions and we went through about 90 minutes of prep before we answered them, we now know if my players go in an immediate direction, how we can facilitate those scenes. Likewise, if they go into a different direction, we have a lot of resources at our disposal. So this has been the second prep session of the Dracula Dossier campaign. Our goal was to begin personalizing the campaign, and we did that through looking at our 2 potential branching scenarios and making decisions off of that, which also helped inform how we would answer the questions at the front of the document. So these questions are answered by everyone who runs the Dracula Dossier campaign, and you can also run the campaign in a default manner, and that's okay as well, without customizing it. But for us, we're going to end up doing that by the very nature of the campaign. So thank you so much for tuning in. I would like to drop some links in chat. Again, we are playing the Dracula Dossier campaign. It takes place on Saturdays at 5 p.m. Eastern. That is a link to the Dossier campaign. If you are interested in a discount, 20% off of any of the products associated with the Dracula Dossier. In Night's Black Agents, there is a voucher code that I am providing in chat. Our music is from the album Dust and Mirrors, which was produced by Pelgrane Press, and there is also a link to that. We are very appreciative to Pelgrane for providing us with a soundtrack for our shows and our production, as well as these beautiful books and assets that we're able to demonstrate. Likewise, if you want to learn more about Night's Black Agents or the Gumshoe system, there is a link to that. Again, I will send you the voucher code, and I'd also like to give a shout out to the members of my cast who are playing in the game every week. I'm posting their socials in the chat. They are Pro, Jess, Lily, and Sharung. So thank you so much for tuning in to the second prep stream, and you can see how the type of prep that we're doing is changing. So we're going from reading very close to line by line in a prepared adventure from Free RPG Day to beginning to answer more and more questions that we find within the campaign book itself. And we're starting to bounce around the documents and starting to shape the campaign. Likewise, my players are starting to generate material as they read the book. So I will leave you once more with our intro video and catch you on Saturday at 5 p.m. when we play our second session of the Dracula Dossier campaign for Night's Black Agents. Thank you, and have an excellent evening.